The dining room was eerily quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Theodore sat at the head of the table, his posture rigid, his hands clenched into fists on the polished wood surface. Across from him, Brooklyn leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. Attention hung in the air, thick and suffocating, as if the room itself anticipated the storm brewing between them. Theodore exhaled deeply, his voice breaking the silence. "Brooklyn, we need to talk." Brooklyn didn't look up from her phone. "About what? If this is about work again, I'm not in the mood." Theodore's lips pressed into a thin line. "This isn't about work. It's about us. About what's been going on between us. Or should I say, what hasn't been going on?" She finally met his gaze, a flicker of annoyance crossing her face. "Theodore, you're overthinking things. You always do. Not everything is a conspiracy." He shook his head, his voice rising slightly. "Don't gaslight me, Brooklyn. You've been distant for months, years even. I've tried to ignore it, try to give you space, but I'm done pretending this is normal. I deserve the truth." Brooklyn sighed dramatically, tossing her phone onto the table. "Oh, here we go." The insecure husband act. "Theodore, it's exhausting." His patience snapped. Theodore's fist came down on the table with a loud thud, rattling the silverware and sending a plate teetering. "Enough with the deflections. You think I haven't noticed the late-night calls? The whispered conversations? The way you act like I don't exist when we're home?" Brooklyn flinched, but quickly regained her composure, leaning back in her chair with a smirk. "Fine. You want the truth? Here it is." She crossed her arms, her tone casual but cutting. "Your best friend, Jack, gave me 2 beautiful children while you couldn't. We've been meeting in your bed for 12 years. And guess what? Your mother helped us keep it a secret. She says Jack is the son she's always wanted." Theodore's face went pale, his breath catching in his throat. For a moment, he couldn't speak. He stared at her, struggling to process the words that had just shattered his world. Finally, he managed to force a bitter smile. "Funny," he said, his voice eerily calm. "The fertility clinic called earlier today. Turns out Jack has been sterile since birth. So, Brooklyn, who else have you been keeping busy with?" Brooklyn's confident facade cracked for a split second. Her smirk wavered, her eyes darting away before she quickly recovered. "Oh, so now you're playing detective? That's rich. Too little, too late, Theodore. If Jack's sterile, then maybe you should be asking your other friends about those kids." Theodore's hands trembled as he leaned forward, his eyes boring into hers. "Don't you dare try to turn this on me. You've been lying to me, to our kids, to everyone. 12 years, Brooklyn. 12 years of betrayal. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Brooklyn's expression hardened, her voice venomous. "What I've done? Oh, please. You've always been so weak, so pathetic. You were never man enough to keep me satisfied. I had to find someone who could." Theodore recoiled as if she had slapped him. The words stung more than he thought possible, cutting deeper than any betrayal. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You think I'm the problem?" he said, his voice trembling with anger. "You think this is my fault? You're the one who destroyed this family. You're the one who dragged my mother into this mess. And Jack," Brooklyn cut him off with a cold laugh. "Don't act so high and mighty, Theodore. You're boring, predictable. Jack is everything you're not: strong, exciting, a real man. And clearly, your mother agrees." Theodore's fists clenched at his sides, his knuckles white. He wanted to shout, to scream, but instead, he took a deep breath, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. "You've taken everything from me: my trust, my dignity, my family. But you'll regret this, Brooklyn. Mark my words, you'll regret every second of it." Brooklyn rolled her eyes, her smirk returning. "Oh, please. What are you going to do? Cry about it? You've already lost, Theodore. Face it." Theodore stared at her for a long moment, his mind racing. He felt the weight of her betrayal, the bitterness of her words, but beneath the pain, a fire began to burn. He had spent years sacrificing for a woman who had thrown his love back in his face. No more. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the dining room, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor. Brooklyn called after him, her voice mocking. "Running away, Theodore? That's what you're good at." He didn't look back. As he climbed the stairs to their bedroom, his heart pounded with a mix of rage and determination. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Theodore stood in their bedroom, staring at the bed that had been defiled by her betrayal. His hands trembled as he grabbed the framed photo of their family from the nightstand. He studied the smiling faces, the lies frozen in time, and hurled it against the wall, the glass shattering into 1,000 pieces. The sound brought Brooklyn to the doorway, her arms crossed as she leaned casually against the frame. Temper tantrums now? Very mature. Theodore glared at her, his chest heaving. Get out. Brooklyn raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a sneer. Excuse me? You heard me, he said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. Get out of this room. Get out of my sight. I can't even look at you right now. She shrugged, turning to leave. Suit yourself. But this doesn't change anything, Theodore. You'll come crawling back. You always do. As she disappeared down the hall, Theodore sank onto the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. The weight of her betrayal was crushing, but he knew he couldn't let it break him. Not this time. For 12 years, he had been the victim of her lies, her manipulations. But now, he was done being the fool. It was time to take control. It was time for her to face the consequences of her actions. And as the fire in his chest burned brighter, Theodore made a silent vow. He would rebuild his life piece by piece. And Brooklyn, along with everyone who had betrayed him, would watch as he rose from the ashes, stronger than ever. Theodore leaned back in the driver's seat of his car, parked in a deserted lot just a few miles from the house he used to call home. The night air seeped through the cracked window, chilling his skin, but he barely noticed. His mind churned as he replayed Brooklyn's words, each one a dagger to his heart. Jack gave me 2 beautiful children. Your mother helped us hide it. You were never man enough. His fists clenched, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. He wanted to scream, to hit something, to release the storm raging inside him. But he didn't. Instead, he sat in silence, staring at the dashboard as the betrayal solidified into something darker, something sharper. By dawn, Theodore had a plan. Theodore's first stop was the bank. As soon as the doors opened, he walked in and approached the teller. I need to access my joint account, he said, his tone calm but firm. The teller nodded, typing on her keyboard. Of course. May I see some ID? He handed over his license, watching as she pulled up the account details. How much would you like to withdraw? All of it, Theodore said without hesitation. The teller's fingers paused midair. All of it? That's quite a large amount, sir. I'm aware, he replied, his voice steady. Just transfer it to my personal account. As she worked, Theodore felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Brooklyn wouldn't notice until it was too late. He imagined her face when she tried to access the account and found it empty. It was a small victory, but it was a start. Next, Theodore called his real estate agent. I need to sell the house, he said. The agent hesitated. Theodore, are you sure? You've lived there for years. I'm sure, he said firmly. Sell it as quickly as possible. I don't care about the price. Just get it done. After hanging up, Theodore sat in the car, staring at the house from a distance. He thought about the memories they had built there, the birthdays, the holidays, the quiet evenings watching movies on the couch. All of it felt tainted now. He didn't want it anymore. The hardest part was confronting his mother. Theodore arrived at her house unannounced, his heart pounding as he knocked on the door. When she opened it, her face lit up with surprise. Theodore, what a nice surprise, she said, stepping aside to let him in. He didn't return her smile. We need to talk? Her expression faltered. What's wrong? Theodore walked past her, into the living room. He turned to face her, his hands on his hips. Brooklyn told me everything. His mother froze, her face paling. Theodore, she told me about the affair. About Jack. About you helping them hide it. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. How could you? Theodore's voice broke. You're my mother. You were supposed to support me, protect me. Instead, you sided with her, with him. I didn't mean for it to happen this way, she said weakly. I was just trying to. To what? He interrupted. To destroy my marriage? To betray your own son? Tears filled her eyes. Theodore, please. I made a mistake. I didn't know how to fix it. It's too late for that, he said, his voice cold. I trusted you. and you threw that trust away." He turned to leave, ignoring her pleas for forgiveness. As he walked out the door, he felt a strange sense of relief. Cutting ties with her was painful, but it was necessary. Theodore spent the next few days preparing for his departure. He quit his job, packed his belongings, and disconnected from everyone who had been a part of his old life. Brooklyn called him multiple times, leaving angry voicemails. "Theodore, what the hell is going on? The account is empty. The house is listed for sale. Call me back." Jack sent a single text. "We need to talk." Theodore deleted it without replying. On the day he left, Theodore stood in the driveway, his car packed with everything he needed to start fresh. He took one last look at the house, his heart heavy but resolute. "Goodbye," he whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. Then he got into the car and drove away, leaving behind the ashes of his old life. Theodore's plan didn't end there. As he settled into his new life in another city, he began to dig deeper into Brooklyn and Jack's deceit. He hired a private investigator to gather evidence of their affair, ensuring that the divorce would leave them with nothing. When the investigator delivered the photos, Theodore felt a mixture of satisfaction and heartbreak. The images were undeniable: Brooklyn and Jack meeting in secret, their intimacy captured in stark detail. He filed for divorce the next day. Brooklyn's reaction was immediate. She called him, her voice frantic. "Theodore, what are you doing? We can fix this." "There's nothing to fix," he said flatly. "I've already sent the papers. Sign them and leave me alone." "Theodore, please. Think of the kids." "They're not mine," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "And you know it." She broke down into sobs, but Theodore didn't waver. He had given her enough chances. By the time the divorce was finalized, Theodore felt a sense of closure. Brooklyn and Jack had been exposed, their reputations ruined. His mother had tried to reach out again, but he ignored her calls. Theodore knew he couldn't erase the pain of what had happened, but he could control what came next. And for the first time in years, he felt free. Theodore stepped out of the courthouse, clutching the stack of papers that would end his marriage. The cold breeze stung his face, but it was nothing compared to the icy resolve in his heart. Everything was in motion now. There was no turning back. The first blow landed the morning after he sold the house. Brooklyn, groggy and in her pajamas, stumbled into the living room to find a stranger packing up the furniture. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice sharp. The man didn't look up. "I'm here on behalf of the new owner. We were told to clear out everything." Brooklyn's face twisted in confusion. "New owner? What the hell are you talking about? This is our house." Theodore appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Not anymore." Brooklyn turned to him, her anger quickly replaced by panic. "Theodore, what is this? What's going on?" "I sold the house," he said simply, crossing his arms. "You need to be out by the end of the day." Her jaw dropped. You can't do that." "I already did." Her voice rose, shrill and desperate. "Where are we supposed to go? What about the kids?" Theodore's face hardened. "They're not my kids, Brooklyn. Remember?" Tears welled in her eyes, but he didn't waver. He had spent too long being manipulated by her lies. The next strike came when the divorce papers were delivered. Brooklyn was sitting at the kitchen table, trying to comfort the children, when the doorbell rang. She opened it to find a courier holding a large envelope. "Mrs. Carter?" She nodded, taking the envelope with trembling hands. As she read the contents, her face drained of color. Not only were the papers explicit about her infidelity, but they also included the evidence Theodore had gathered: photos of her and Jack together, emails, and text messages. The last page contained a financial summary. Theodore was seeking sole ownership of his personal assets and full withdrawal of the joint account. Brooklyn flipped through the pages, her hands shaking. "This can't be happening," she whispered. By the time Brooklyn found Theodore, he was at a cafe, calmly sipping his coffee. She stormed in, the envelope clutched in her hand. "Theodore," she yelled, drawing the attention of other patrons. He didn't flinch. "Sit down, Brooklyn. You're making a scene?" "I don't care," she hissed, leaning over the table. "You can't do this to me." "To us?" "There is no us," Theodore said evenly, placing his cup down. "Not anymore." Her voice cracked. "Think of the children, Theodore. They need stability. They need their home. Theodore leaned forward, his eyes cold. They're not my children, and their stability is your responsibility now, not mine. Brooklyn slumped into the chair across from him, tears streaming down her face. Theodore, please. I made a mistake. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We can go to therapy. Anything you want. Theodore laughed bitterly. You don't get it, do you? This isn't something you can fix. You destroyed our marriage the moment you brought Jack into it, and my mother for that matter. There's no coming back from that. Brooklyn reached for his hand, but he pulled away. Theodore, she whispered. I love you. His expression darkened. Don't you dare say that to me. Later that day, Jack showed up at Theodore's temporary apartment, his face pale and drawn. Theodore, he began, his voice pleading. Can we talk? Theodore opened the door just enough to glare at him. What could you possibly have to say? Jack stepped back, running a hand through his hair. I know I messed up. I wasn't thinking straight. It was a mistake. Theodore raised an eyebrow. A mistake? 12 years of sneaking around with my wife was a mistake. Jack's shoulders slumped. I'm sorry, man. I don't know what else to say. I never wanted it to end like this. Theodore laughed, a harsh, mirthless sound. You didn't want it to end like this? How did you expect it to end, Jack? Were you planning on telling me at my kid's graduation? Oh, wait, they're not even mine? Jack's face twisted with guilt. Theodore, I was wrong. I was selfish. But we can fix this. We've been friends for years. Don't throw that away. Theodore's hand tightened on the doorframe. I threw it away? You destroyed it the moment you walked into my house and into my bed. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? To my life. Jack opened his mouth to respond, but Theodore cut him off. You and Brooklyn deserve each other, he said coldly. And I hope you're ready to deal with the fallout. Because I'm done cleaning up after your mess. Theodore slammed the door, ignoring Jack's attempts to knock again. Over the next few weeks, the consequences of Brooklyn and Jack's actions became painfully clear. With the house sold and the joint account drained, Brooklyn struggled to find a place to stay. She moved into a small, run-down apartment with the children, a far cry from the comfortable life she had enjoyed. Jack, meanwhile, faced his own challenges. Word of the affair spread quickly, tarnishing his reputation both personally and professionally. Mutual friends distanced themselves, and his career took a hit as colleagues lost respect for him. Both of them reached out to Theodore repeatedly, begging for forgiveness. Brooklyn left tearful voicemails. Theodore, please. I'm sorry for everything. I was stupid, selfish. But we had something special. Don't let it end like this. Jack's messages were more subdued, but no less desperate. Man, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need to make things right. Let's talk. Theodore deleted every message without listening to the end. On the day the divorce was finalized, Theodore treated himself to a quiet dinner alone. He felt lighter, freer than he had in years. Brooklyn and Jack had tried to ruin him, but he had come out stronger. As he raised a glass of whiskey to his lips, he thought about the future, one free of lies, betrayal, and manipulation. He didn't know what it held, but for the first time in a long time, he was ready to find out. Brooklyn and Jack had made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences. Theodore, on the other hand, had chosen to move on, and for the first time, he truly felt at peace. 5 years had passed, yet the memories of betrayal no longer haunted Theodore. They had been replaced by something far more rewarding. Peace. Sitting on the porch of a modest house in the suburbs, he watched the late afternoon sun cast a warm glow over the garden he had planted with Cecilia. Dinner's ready, Cecilia called from the kitchen. Theodore stood, brushing dirt off his hands from pruning a rose bush. Be right there. He walked inside, the aroma of roasted chicken filling the air. Cecilia greeted him with a smile, her auburn hair pulled back into a loose ponytail. How's the garden coming along? She asked, setting plates on the table. It's thriving, Theodore said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. Thanks to your green thumb. Cecilia laughed. All I did was give you a few tips. You've done the hard work. Theodore looked at her, marveling at how different this life was from the one he had left behind. Cecilia was everything Brooklyn wasn't, honest, kind, and fiercely loyal. He hadn't just rebuilt his life. He had found someone who made him believe in love again. Meanwhile, Brooklyn's world had crumbled. After the divorce, she had struggled to maintain any semblance of stability. Her small apartment was a far cry from the spacious house she had once shared with Theodore. The children, now teenagers, were distant and bitter. One evening, as Brooklyn sat on the couch, scrolling through job listings on her battered laptop, her son stormed into the living room. "Where's my soccer cleats?" he demanded. Brooklyn looked up, startled. "I don't know, sweetheart. Did you check your room?" "They're not there," he snapped. "This is why I hate living here. Nothing ever gets done." Brooklyn's face fell. "Don't talk to me like that," she said, her voice wavering. Her son rolled his eyes. "Whatever. I'll figure it out myself." As he stomped off, her daughter walked in, earbuds dangling around her neck. "Mom, can you give me money for a field trip?" she asked without preamble. Brooklyn sighed. "I'll see what I can do, but money's tight right now." Her daughter groaned. "It's always tight. Why don't you just ask Dad?" "Oh, wait, you can't." Brooklyn flinched at the jab. "That's enough," she said firmly. The girl shrugged, heading to her room without another word. Brooklyn sank back into the couch, the weight of her choices pressing down on her. Her children blamed her for everything, for the divorce, for the instability, for their strained relationship with Theodore. Jack had disappeared not long after the divorce. At first, he had tried to make the relationship with Brooklyn work, but the pressure of their mutual disgrace proved too much. "I can't do this anymore," Jack had said one night, throwing clothes into a duffel bag. Brooklyn had watched him, her voice trembling. "You're just going to leave? After everything we've been through?" Jack zipped the bag shut and slung it over his shoulder. "I didn't sign up for this. Your kids hate me, and I can't even show my face in public without people whispering behind my back. So you're running away?" she spat. "I'm cutting my losses," he said, heading for the door. "Good luck, Brooklyn." She hadn't seen him since. Even Theodore's mother had abandoned Brooklyn. After Theodore cut ties with her, she had reached out to Brooklyn for support, but their relationship quickly soured. "Don't you think we've been punished enough?" Brooklyn had asked during one of their tense phone calls. Theodore's mother sighed. "Brooklyn, I made a mistake supporting you and Jack. But I've lost my son because of it. Do you really think I have anything left to give you?" Brooklyn's anger flared. "So that's it? You're turning your back on me too?" "I don't have a choice," she said quietly. "I need to try and fix things with Theodore, if that's even possible." Brooklyn had slammed the phone down, another bridge burned. Theodore's life, by contrast, had flourished. After leaving everything behind, he had moved to a new city and started a small consulting business. The work was fulfilling, and the freedom to chart his own path was exhilarating. One evening, as Theodore and Cecilia were cleaning up after dinner, his phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at the screen and froze. "It's Brooklyn," he said, his tone neutral. Cecilia paused, setting a plate in the sink. "Do you want to answer it?" Theodore shook his head. "No, she's part of my past, not my present." The call went to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of him later that night. He listened to the message while sitting on the porch, the stars twinkling overhead. "Theodore, it's me," Brooklyn's voice began, hesitant. "I don't know why I'm calling. I guess I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I regret what I did. I ruined everything, and I've paid the price. I hope you're happy, Theodore. You deserve to be." Theodore deleted the message without replying. A few weeks later, Theodore attended a community event with Cecilia. As they mingled with neighbors, he noticed a familiar face in the crowd. It was Jack. Jack's once confident demeanor was gone. He looked older, thinner, his shoulders slumped. Their eyes met, and Jack hesitated before walking over. "Theodore," he said, his voice subdued. Theodore raised an eyebrow. "Jack." Jack shifted uncomfortably. "I heard you were in town. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything." Theodore crossed his arms. "You've had 5 years to say that. Why now?" Jack glanced at Cecilia, then back at Theodore. "I guess seeing you happy made me realize how badly I messed up. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to say it." Theodore studied him for a moment before nodding. "Apology accepted. But don't mistake that for reconciliation. We're done, Jack." Jack nodded, looking genuinely remorseful. I understand. Take care, Theodore. As Jack walked away, Cecilia touched Theodore's arm. Are you okay? Theodore smiled at her. I'm more than okay. Let's go home. As the years continued to pass, Theodore remained steadfast in his decision to leave the past behind. Brooklyn and Jack had made their choices, and they were living with the consequences. Theodore, however, had chosen a different path, one of self-respect, love, and renewal. And as he sat in the garden with Cecilia, watching the sunset, he knew he had made the right choice. The rain poured in relentless sheets as thunder rumbled in the distance. Theodore was sitting by the fireplace, a book in hand, enjoying the quiet evening. Cecilia was in the kitchen, humming softly as she baked. The warmth of their home was a stark contrast to the storm outside. A sudden knock at the door broke the tranquility. Theodore glanced at the clock. It was nearly midnight. Frowning, he set his book aside and stood. Who could that be at this hour? Cecilia asked, peering out from the kitchen. Probably someone caught in the storm, Theodore replied, heading to the door. When he opened it, he froze. There, standing in the rain, was Brooklyn. Her clothes were soaked through, and her hair clung to her face. She looked utterly defeated. Theodore, she said, her voice trembling. I need to talk to you. Theodore's jaw tightened. He had been through this before, her pleas, her manipulations. He wasn't going to fall for it again. This isn't the time or place, Brooklyn, he said, his tone cold. Please, she said, stepping forward. I'm begging you. Just hear me out. Cecilia appeared in the hallway, her eyes widening at the sight of Brooklyn. She didn't say anything, but her presence was a quiet reassurance to Theodore. He sighed and stepped aside. 5 minutes. Brooklyn entered, dripping water onto the hardwood floor. She glanced at Cecilia, then back at Theodore, her expression a mix of desperation and shame. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Theodore motioned for her to sit, but Brooklyn remained standing, wringing her hands. I know I'm the last person you want to see, she began, but I didn't know where else to go. Theodore crossed his arms. That's not my problem, Brooklyn. You made your choices. Her voice cracked. I know, and I've paid for them every single day. Jack's gone. The kids barely speak to me. I've lost everything, Theodore. Everything. And whose fault is that? He shot back, his voice rising. You think you can just show up here and undo all the damage you caused? Brooklyn flinched, tears streaming down her face. I'm not asking for that. I know I can't fix what I did. I just want a chance to make things right. To apologize. To what? Theodore interrupted, his anger simmering beneath the surface. You lied to me for 12 years. You let another man into our bed, and you had my mother help you cover it up. You didn't just break our marriage, you shattered it. Brooklyn dropped to her knees, sobbing. I know, Theodore, and I hate myself for it. I was selfish and stupid, and I ruined everything. But I've changed. I'm not the same person I was. Theodore stared at her, his emotions swirling. He had dreamed of this moment, seeing her broken, begging for forgiveness. But now that it was happening, he felt no satisfaction, only a hollow emptiness. Cecilia stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. Brooklyn, I think it's time for you to leave. Brooklyn looked up at her, pleading. Please, I just need a chance to explain, to make him understand. Cecilia shook her head. He already understands. You're the one who doesn't. You need to accept that your actions have consequences. Theodore placed a hand on Cecilia's arm, a silent gesture of gratitude. Then he turned back to Brooklyn. Here's what you don't seem to grasp, he said, his voice steady. Forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to the way they were. And some things can't be forgiven at all. Brooklyn clutched at his pant leg, her voice breaking. Theodore, please. I'll do anything. I'll move anywhere, take any job. Just don't hate me. Don't leave me like this. Theodore gently pulled his leg away, his gaze unyielding. Brooklyn, I stopped hating you a long time ago, but that doesn't mean I owe you anything. I've moved on. You should too. The rain outside had slowed to a drizzle, but Brooklyn stayed on the floor, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Finally, she looked up at him, her face a picture of despair. Do you ever think about what we had? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Theodore paused, then nodded. I do. But it's a memory now, not a future. The person I thought I loved doesn't exist anymore. Brooklyn's tears came harder, and she buried her face in her hands. I'm so sorry, Theodore. I'm so sorry. Theodore exhaled, the weight of years of pain and betrayal lifting slightly. I know you are, but that doesn't change what happened. He walked to the door and opened it, gesturing for her to leave. Goodbye, Brooklyn. She hesitated, then stood slowly, her movements heavy with defeat. She looked at Cecilia one last time, then back at Theodore. I hope you're happy, she said softly. I am, Theodore replied, his voice steady. And I hope you find a way to be too. Brooklyn stepped out into the rain, her silhouette fading into the night. Theodore closed the door and leaned against it, his chest rising and falling with a deep breath. Cecilia approached him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. Are you okay? He turned to her, a small smile forming on his lips. Yeah, I think I finally am. They stood there for a moment, the storm outside a distant echo of the one that had finally passed in Theodore's heart. For the first time in years, he felt truly free. The wedding was everything Theodore and Cecilia had envisioned, simple, heartfelt, and intimate. They had chosen a small, picturesque venue nestled in the countryside, surrounded by rolling hills and blooming wildflowers. Close friends and family gathered to witness their union, their faces beaming with genuine joy for the couple. Theodore stood at the altar, his dark suit tailored perfectly, his nerves steady for the first time in years. Cecilia walked toward him, her white gown flowing gracefully as she clutched a small bouquet of daisies. Her eyes sparkled with warmth and happiness. When she reached him, Theodore took her hand, and they shared a smile that spoke volumes. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a celebration of resilience, trust, and the love they had built together. The officiant began the ceremony with a light-hearted joke that earned a chuckle from the guests, but Theodore barely heard it. His focus was solely on Cecilia. When the vows came, his voice was steady and clear. Cecilia, he began, when I met you, I wasn't looking for love. I wasn't even sure I believed in it anymore. But you showed me that love isn't about perfection or grand gestures. It's about kindness, honesty, and showing up every single day. You've given me a reason to believe again, and I promise to spend the rest of my life earning the trust you've placed in me. Tears glistened in Cecilia's eyes as she spoke her vows. Theodore, you are the strongest person I've ever met, not because of what you've been through, but because of how you've chosen to rise above it. You've taught me what it means to truly love and to be loved in return. I promise to stand by your side, to support you, and to build a life with you filled with hope and laughter. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, they kissed to the sound of applause and cheers. The reception was held outdoors under a canopy of twinkling lights. Guests mingled, glasses of champagne in hand, as soft music played in the background. Theodore and Cecilia shared their first dance to an old jazz tune, swaying under the stars while everyone watched with fond smiles. Are you happy? Cecilia whispered as they danced. Theodore looked at her, his expression serene. I'm more than happy. I'm whole. As the evening wore on, laughter and conversation filled the air. Theodore found himself surrounded by people who genuinely cared for him, a stark contrast to the toxic relationships he had left behind. At one point, he caught his best man, Ethan, grinning at him from across the table. What's that look for? Theodore asked, taking a sip of his drink. I'm just proud of you, man, Ethan said. You've come a long way. And Cecilia? She's incredible. Theodore nodded. She is. I don't know how I got so lucky. Ethan smirked. You earned it. After everything, you deserve this. As the night wound down, Theodore and Cecilia sat on the edge of the dance floor, watching the guests enjoy themselves. You know, Cecilia said, leaning her head on his shoulder, this is just the beginning. There's so much ahead of us. Theodore wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. I know, and for the first time, I'm looking forward to it. Far away, in a dingy apartment in the city, Brooklyn sat alone, scrolling through social media. She stumbled upon a picture someone had posted from Theodore's wedding, a candid shot of him and Cecilia laughing together. Her chest tightened as she stared at the image. Theodore looked so different, relaxed, content, like a man who had finally found peace. She set her phone down, the weight of regret pressing heavily on her. Her life had become a series of unending struggles, financial instability, estranged children, and a reputation that had never recovered. Jack was long gone, having moved to another state to start over, leaving her to face the consequences of their actions alone. She poured herself a glass of wine and sat by the window, listening to the rain tapping against the glass. Back at the reception, Theodore was approached by Cecilia's father, a kind man with a firm handshake. "I just want you to know," he said, his voice warm, "that I couldn't be happier to welcome you into our family. Cecilia's been through her share of challenges, and it's clear you make her incredibly happy." "Thank you," Theodore replied, feeling a lump in his throat. "That means a lot." As the guests began to leave, Theodore and Cecilia stood by the exit, thanking everyone for coming. When the last car pulled away, they were left alone under the night sky. "Well," Cecilia said, turning to him with a playful smile, "what now, Mr. Benson?" Theodore laughed, pulling her into his arms. Now we live the life we've always dreamed of." They walked hand in hand toward their car, the stars above shining brightly as if to mark the beginning of a new chapter. Brooklyn's final thoughts lingered as she sat in the darkened room, staring out at the city lights. Somewhere deep inside, she knew she had no one to blame but herself. Theodore, however, had moved on, and his happiness was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Betrayal had once shattered him, but it had also paved the way for a better, brighter future. And as he drove away from the reception with Cecilia by his side, Theodore didn't spare a single thought for the life he had left behind. His heart was too full of hope, and his mind too focused on the possibilities that lay ahead.